Hi guys, John from Paved in Stone. Today I want to talk to you about why I love a good semi. Alright, so we're talking about semi-dry mortar, alright, for our laying course or our bed. What we're talking about principally is a 4-in-1 sharp sand and cement mix, semi-dry, so we're controlling the water content. If I squeeze that in my hand, it's just going to hold its shape. Imagine that squeezing with my hand. That's what's happening is I'm tapping my slab down, I'm locking it all together, and it's going to go hard. So what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to control the moisture content within our mortar. I'm coming at this from an angle of working with natural stone, because that's principally what a lot of my experience is. So controlling that water content by using a semi-dry mix, you're going to be able to mitigate a lot of problems that we see with natural stone. I'm talking things like reflective staining, efflorescence, picture framing, all right? Because actually what's happening there with our natural stones, so let's think about perhaps more common porous stones like sandstones, limestones, all right? If you lay onto a wet mix with that, the stone you're putting on is porous via a wicking effect or a capillary action, because water always wants to move from a high pressure to a low pressure, right? That's just the way nature works. All right, so if you've put your slab down on a wet mix, the water in that slab, in your mix, is going to get pulled up into your slab. That's where we start to see problems like efflorescence and reflective staining, because it's sucking the moisture up from the bottom of your bed. And if you've got any voids in that underneath there, you're in real problems. You know, particularly more of a problem with things like sawn sandstones, really porous. So we have to try and mitigate that. So one way I try to mitigate that is with my semi-dry mix. What I'm talking about really is trying to control the migration of water up and down through my laying course. Obviously that's important for when it rains, heavy downpours. It's also important for when we get into our wetter seasons, perhaps where you're working, the water table's going to rise, so you know water's going to come in anyway. And I just think we're moving towards this logic now that rather than trying to fight water and keep water away from everything, we almost are trying to embrace it and allow it just to get away from what we're doing rather than trying to hold it out. I hope that makes sense. So I've done a little experiment. We have done a video before, which you can find on our channel. In fact, I'll try and put a link in the description, where I talk about why it's sharp sand and not building sand. We're talking about the particles and the grains in between there, right? So with our 4-in-1 sharp sand mix, what I've done here is I've made a semi-dry mix and I've made a wet mix. Now you can see this has still got a bit of water in it, because actually for the purpose of this experiment I had to test it just to make sure I didn't make myself look like an idiot. So this is our semi-dry mix. Thinking about those angular grains, the way they've locked in together, what happens when you get heavy downpours or you get water sat on it. So if I pour some water in there, and I'll just top that up for the purpose of this experiment so you can see I'm not cheating. Now what's happening straight away, we can see really quickly the water here is all but gone already. It's going through, so all those grains, the spaces in between those grains that have locked together is where that water is escaping. Now with my wet mix, I've replaced all the spaces, those spaces in the grains, I've replaced that with water and basically hydrogen bonds. Now those hydrogen bonds, what happens to those is when you get to your freeze-thaw cycles, those are the bits that are going to start breaking down. That's where you're going to start having problems by having an overly wet bed. Imagine we've got a slab on top of here, and perhaps you've got a slight void. This is where your reflective staining comes up with your wet bed, all right? Because it's holding that water underneath. That then comes through to the top of the slab. It shows where the water is and where it isn't. And we can just see, look, this is dry already to the touch, still holding water here. So hopefully this is starting to demonstrate what I'm talking about trying to manage and control the movement of water through our laying course. Now some of you will say, oh well, using a semi-dry mix, the slab's not going to bond to it, and you're absolutely right. That's why for me primer is a must. So I chucked this bit of offcut down with a bit of primer on it onto a little bit of semi-dry. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, I gave it a couple of taps. Now you can see that's bonded, there's no problems there at all. Yeah, that's solid. Thinking about what forces are we really looking at when we're talking about patios? We're talking about a compressive force. We're not necessarily talking about lateral movement. Perhaps that's more important on driveways. Certainly that's important when we're talking about retaining edges, but for the bulk of our patio work, we're talking about that compressive force. Gravity's pulling it down, you're walking over it, all of that. That's what we want to be seeing, okay? So nothing wrong with that. So that's the advantages of the semi-dry. One more advantage, should I say. So if I'm here and I'm working away, let's move that a minute. and I've got my trowel and I've been a bit distracted and I've dropped some on there. Oh dear. It's not a big problem. There we go. Clean, no staining, no problem at all. Now, it's not all smooth sailing. If you're using this semi-dry, you've got to be a little bit better on your bed. You've got to develop that skill a little bit more. Your bed's got to be more accurate, because when you're tapping down on a semi-dry, it's only going to go so far and it's getting all compacted underneath. On a wet mix, a lot of us like to use a wet mix because it's easier to lay the slabs in there, but I would encourage you to think about a semi-dry. Let's say principally with natural stone, but there's no reason why you can't use this on porcelain, marble, granite, whatever paving that you're using. Think about using the semi-dry. Think about that controlling of moisture coming through. Think about how tidy it is on your job, how much tidier your kit's going to be every day. All right, lots and lots of benefits to using a semi-dry. That's why I use it. Maybe you'll give it a go. Let me know. Cheers.